Welcome to the Miracle You, guiding you on the journey towards finding passion and purpose, and how to discover, create, and live a life by your design. Whether your success has been plentiful or your missed opportunities have been overwhelming, we can help you become a more empowered, masterful person and show you how to share your gift with the world. It's time to inspire change from within with the host of the Miracle You, Vince Kramer.
Hello, imagination. I'm Vince Kramer, your host, and welcome to the Miracle You, where you learn about the magic of living your life by finding the example in real life.
Conflict is just part of life. We have conflict inside, we have conflict outside, we have conflict over things that we believe should look a certain way when someone else believes it should look a different way. And this conflict tends to create situations in our lives which lower our vibration. But I want to share with you that conflict is important in our lives. Without conflict, we wouldn't know where we could grow. We don't know where we could expand. Without the conflict, we wouldn't know what we don't want, because we need to know what we don't want so we know what we do want. So conflict is important, but it's also important to learn how to deal with that conflict. Deal with the conflict on the inside, be it just conflict in us looking at our values and how we may have to turn something down because it doesn't match our values, or where we're willing to expand or stretch our values. There's conflict in our day-to-day relationships where we don't see eye to eye with someone. And it's important for us to learn how to be more, shall we say, willing to look at someone else's side, willing to compromise, as you'll hear our guest say today, in moving beyond that conflict. So it's not something that you want to avoid. It's something you want to learn how to deal with and how to use conflict to help yourself grow, help yourself expand, and then help in the transformation of others by understanding how to deal with conflict. I'm with Jerry Fu today. Jerry is a conflict resolution coach who helps Asian American leaders advance in their career and life journeys. Having taken on several pharmacy leadership roles, Jerry started coaching in 2017 to help other Asian American professionals deal with the conflict they encounter at work, with their culture, and within themselves. Jerry Fu, are you ready to share the miracle of you with the imagination?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
I'm so excited to have you here. And you're the first conflict coach I've had. So I'm really excited to dig into conflict, because there's so much that goes on with my clients in conflict and everyone else in the world. So I'm sure you've got some amazing things to share. But before you do that, Jerry, could you tell us a little bit more about you and what you do?
Certainly. Yeah. Pharmacist by day. And, but also, I started my leadership coaching business last October, actually. It took a pandemic for me to finally get off my seat and file the LLC and take care of things and, get my website up and all that jazz. So in my spare time, I love trying new restaurants and traveling as COVID permits. And also salsa dancing is a big part of my life that makes me feel alive. But otherwise, leadership was a struggle, became a fascination, and a subset of that challenge set is conflict resolution. Was a struggle, still a struggle, but now much more fascinating to me to really study it and to help others get better at it.
And it's something that's so important for each of us to understand, that there has to be conflict in the universe, but how do we deal with that conflict? That's another story. Let me ask you this, Jerry. As I was doing research, I read a little bit about the wake-up call that you've had in life. Could you share that wake-up and how it's made a difference in you moving into truly being a leadership coach?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the wake-up call, guys, is getting fired from the job I moved to Houston for. And at the time, I was working in a chain pharmacy, got complacent with my career path. As long as I had my comforts, I was going to stay comfortable. And once those were taken away from me, I said, okay, I need something different. So I wanted to get into teaching. I didn't have a PhD or residency to take on a conventional university job, but a friend who worked for a pharmacy consulting company said, hey, my teaching position is open since I got promoted. Do you want to apply for it? And I said, absolutely. So I walked away from a full-time job with benefits to take on this part-time teaching position. I moved from Tennessee to Houston specifically for this job, by the way. So I was banking on a lot that this would be the last company I'd ever have to work for. And 11 months later, I got fired. And, I already had enough conflict dealing with the fact that I didn't want to admit that my boss didn't want me to tell stories as to why I didn't get the job done. Like somehow I had to deal with this conflict that, my previous way of thinking that somehow, as long as I do better than 70% of the workforce, that somehow my boss would be okay with me. But now I was really being held accountable to the position I was hired to fill. And 11 months in hindsight is very generous. And so when I got that call into the big boss's office and he told me, hey, today's your last day, that was really sobering. So that was at the time very, very painful. That was the longest drive home I ever had, even though I only lived 4 miles from work at the time. And it took a couple years before a friend of mine kind of flipped that incident on its head. And he said, and I told him, I was struggling to find gainful work for several years after that. And I still technically am. But I told him, getting fired had to be one of the worst things that ever happened to me. And he pauses for a second and Mike goes, well, could you look at it as the best thing that's ever happened to you? And next thing you know, what do I tell people now, Vince? It was the wake-up call I needed to realize, hey, there is conflict between what you thought was working and what needs to work. And you can either frame it in such a way to say, hey, they just didn't appreciate you, you were going to quit that job anyway and play sour grapes, or you could really study it, grow from it, learn from it, and become the kind of employee that never gets fired again because you're just that good.
Jerry, I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit. And I think everybody in imagination probably knows what you're going to answer, but how your expertise can deliver this will be so helpful for all of us. Is there more conflict inside of us or more conflict outside of us?
Oh, great question. The two are definitely connected. I'd say, though, that realistically, from just a numbers standpoint, there's more than enough conflict outside of us. But whether big or small, I'd say the most pressing conflicts are probably within us. So I'd say if we're looking from a numbers standpoint, yeah, outside of us, absolutely. But if we're looking at the most important ones and the most urgent ones we need to deal with, those are the ones that we're dealing with in ourselves.
So as you became an expert in conflict resolution and as you started bringing that to the coaching world, I noticed as I was doing research on your website that there's kind of 3 steps to it that you talk about: clarity, confidence, and closure. Could you share those 3 steps with us and how they help us through the process?
Absolutely. Yeah. Clarity, if you don't have a clear plan, you're not going to move forward, right? If you don't have a standard operating procedure, anytime you see how expectations are broken, you're probably not going to move forward, right? All you do is get angry and you get confused, and then you let apathy set in, because that's what happened to me. Like whenever I started taking on leadership roles, and then all of a sudden, technicians wouldn't be pulling their weight or other things, and I would get mad, but I didn't know what to do. Like no one gave me a manual. Like a quick example is when I served as a church class director, and on my second day, I found out that one of the newer guys was sexually harassing women in the class. And they said, Jerry, you're director now, you got to handle it. It's like, I didn't have a manual. They didn't give me one. They just said, you just got to take care of it. And it's just like, what? Like I have to paint a Van Gogh with a couple brushes and a blank canvas. Like you didn't even give me a paint by numbers kit, right? Give me something. So clarity is the first step, right? When you know what you need to do, it helps. And at the same time, right, you need to have the confidence to say, hey, I actually need to believe I can follow these steps and that it's going to lead to something, right? And so in my framework that you can get on my website, right, I talk about scripting the critical moves. So when you get clear on these steps, rehearse them, right? Practice in front of a mirror, record yourself on your phone, get some friends to role play for you. Maybe you're someone who wants a raise and you don't know how to talk to your boss, right? Have your friend pretend to be the boss that's hesitant to give you the raise. And then maybe when you get strong enough in the dojo, now you can fight on the street, right? So the reps are give you confidence, right? So you can anticipate future barriers. And then closure, that's really, that's the gold mine, right? That's what we're going for. Too often, people in my position that who don't know how to resolve conflict, right? They just want to stay comfortable. And that's where I was for the longest time. And I would say, well, maybe the problem will go away on its own. Maybe people will figure out why I'm mad with them, and that they'll, straighten up and fly right. Doesn't work, guys. I can tell you from experience. But closure, for when I had to evict a roommate, and it wasn't until he moved out. And when he finally moved out, after we, had the necessary conversations, and I told him, hey, be an adult about these things. When he finally handed back the keys and he left for good, I was sad to see him leave. And at the same time, guys, the amount of relief, you can't spell that in a commercial, right? And so, yeah, to trust that closure is better than comfort. And you just feel good knowing that you don't have to deal with this anymore because you've already resolved it.
So Jerry, you shared a couple examples with us already of some conflicts that were in your life. Could you share an example of conflict and how you handled it and how it ended up before you started getting aware of the ways to handle conflict? And then could you share an example after you've learned how to deal with conflict and how that worked out?
Certainly. Yeah. Let's do a before and after for sure. I'll give an example. So the first one where I kind of got through it, but left people kind of feeling hurt and resentful, and despite getting the way I needed to, was when in a previous job, one of the pharmacists I worked alongside dispensed the wrong medication to a patient. Like, she got the profiles mixed up, the wrong person got medication, and me being her manager, my manager said, hey, you got to handle this. And I, so I had to take her aside and go over, what happened exactly, right? And she kept insisting, hey, no, it's the technician's fault. It's the technician's fault. She typed the wrong profile. I didn't mess that up. And, I had to tell her, well, hey, true or false, it is your responsibility to catch and fix any mistakes before they leave the pharmacy, regardless of who made them. She's like, well, yeah, and I said, okay, well, in any case, even if that's true, right, what are you going to do differently? Oh, well, I guess I'll just be a little more careful. And I lost my temper, and I was just like, no, like, unacceptable. Like I need more specific things. She goes, well, I guess I could, underline this or circle this, or, and I said, okay, that sounds better. And I can assure you, all I heard for the next couple of weeks was, well, is this my fault too? Is this my fault too? Is this my fault too? And, you can twist people's arms, but that doesn't really bring out the best of them. And they don't see me. She didn't see me as an advocate, right? Because she just saw me as a guy that's trying to pin her and get her fired, instead of a benevolent leader that's honestly saying, hey, patient safety comes first. Yes. It's like, okay, so, regardless of who's at fault, like, how can we all protect each other, right? Now I'm involving her, right? Now it's less about me trying to scrutinize anybody, as opposed to, hey, I tell people, hey, I can't do my job well unless you do yours well, right? And now when people realize, hey, you know what, he's really counting on me, and he's really gentle in the way he asks these things, and he believes in my abilities to pull my weight, wow, maybe this guy's worth keeping around, right? So that's the failure and what I would do differently. So that's the bonus for you guys. But let me go ahead and transition to a more successful example. So actually, the one I referenced earlier, I'll tell you how that played out. I was already kind of in a precarious position, because not only did I have to handle the situation, I was about to go on vacation. So it wasn't even locally, so I could even meet with this guy to talk to him about this whole thing. So we'll call him Nick. So I call up Nick and I say, hey, Nick, we have a situation where this came up, and I need to get your thoughts on this thing. And so, I tell him, and he goes, oh, no, I don't know what they're talking about. And he just kept insisting on innocence. I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know where this came from. It couldn't have been me. So I said, well, one of three things is true. One, you are right and they are mistaken, which means at best, this is a misunderstanding. And if it is a misunderstanding, I need you to go clear it up and figure out what exactly is the offending behavior. So even if you meant no malicious intent, it is still your responsibility to make sure that's taken care of. But hey, you know what? It's just a misunderstanding. We'll be fine, right? The second possibility is that you're wrong and they're right. You're lying and they're telling the truth, which means you need to go apologize for exactly, what they're referring to and make sure it does not happen again. The third possibility is that you both insist that, each of you is right. And now it becomes your word against theirs. And if that's the case, then I have to ask you to leave because I've known them longer than I've known you. So what's it going to be? And, unfortunately for him, turns out number 2 was the correct answer. And so he ended up getting run off. But all that to say, right, what I did differently this time, right, was number 1, I had to give him the benefit of the doubt. Hey, look, I'm just giving you evidence. I'm just being this powerful mirror. Hey, I'm not saying one thing or another. This is just evidence we need you to address, right? And now the initial confrontation is only just to make contact and initiate that contact. And it is instead, now I'm shifting to the other side, right? Now I'm shifting to the other side. And now we're going from confrontation to collaboration, right? And now, right, when he sees that I'm collaborating, now he realizes, oh, Jerry's not trying to pin me for anything. He's really trying to help me, right? We're both on the same side of the table now, and we're trying to move toward the same solution, right? And so now, right, now things are more productive because now I've enabled him to do something about this, right? To say, hey, look, there are some accusations about you, right? Like, I need you to deal with these. I'm not here to say whether or not they're true or false. I just need you to deal with them, right? Regardless of whether they're true or false. It is in your best interest, right, to act on these things, to do something about it. And I think that's where my approach started to take a turn for the better because, even when I had to evict this roommate, right, I had to show him, hey, look, I'm on your side, right? I'm not happy with you right now, and I'm still going to help you land on your feet, once you leave, right? I'm not here to punitively, take you down or make you suffer. I'm not here to cause suffering for suffering's sake. I am simply trying to restore you to a higher standard. And right now, it sounds like you need a little more help than you're willing to admit.
Excellent. Thank you for those examples. They're very helpful. Could you define conflict for us?
Sure. A simple working definition of conflict is broken expectations. And what I mean by that, just to elaborate a little bit, right? Maybe it's a cultural expectation. Maybe someone didn't realize they had to take their shoes off when they entered an Asian household, right? Maybe it's a work conflict where a technician was supposed to provide a report by 5 o'clock on Friday and didn't for whatever reason, right? And that was a broken expectation. And now there's conflict, right? Maybe someone is not performing up to your standard, right? That's a conflict. Maybe it's a lifestyle choice, right? Maybe I didn't become the doctor that my grandpa wanted me to become, and there's a conflict, right? Maybe it's just a difference of opinions, whether politically or ethnically or economically or otherwise, right? At some point, there's a discrepancy in what people expect, and that's where conflict comes about. It doesn't have to be a bad thing. Let's go ahead and distinguish between healthy and unhealthy conflict, right? For instance, healthy conflict is the conflict between me, my current version of myself, and the future version of myself, right? Conflict comes when a business realizes that their current business model is obsolete and will be, or is going obsolete and will take the company down unless they pivot to something new. Those are good conflicts. But yeah, at some point, expectations either are broken or need to change. And we need to resolve that conflict.
So as we're looking at conflict from through the lenses, if you will, of Imagine Miracles and the Miracle You podcast, you brought up something very interesting. Conflict can become or can be between the you of now and the you of tomorrow. How do people work through that conflict? What would you say to them? How would you help them on that journey?
Yeah, great question. We could go with something cheesy like, a diamond isn't made without lots of friction and pressure, right? Nothing beautiful comes from anything boring, right? Beautiful is not boring. There we go. Like put that on a bumper sticker. But I'd say if people were trying to take some next steps to really say, hey, you know what, I'm ready to make, Vince 2.0 or Vince 2.1 even, right? The first step is to just generate awareness. Hey, what's my routine like right now, right? Do I journal in the morning? Do I meditate for, 10 minutes or an hour or whatever time? What am I eating for breakfast, right? Do I eat pastries or do I eat oatmeal or, what is this leading to, right? And then you say, hey, what is my daily routine leading to? Do I spend time with people who are important to me? Am I doing work that's meaningful to me? And then from there, you say, if you're happy with it, great. What can you do to build on that, right? Or if the answer is, oh, I don't like what my routine is leading me toward, with this eventual trajectory. Okay, what kind of adjustments do I need to make? Okay, maybe I say no to the the cheese Danish and I say yes to the banana or something like that, right? Maybe I disable my internet browser so I can't check the sports websites, which waste all my time because I'm being transparent here. I'm inserting myself as an example, so I'm not taking shots at anybody else. But maybe I lock my phone so that I can't check the internet or my email first thing in the morning, so I can actually take time to meditate and pray and read meaningful literature, right? And so, most people, I'm taking a page from, James Clear's Atomic Habits. The truth is still applicable regardless of where you draw the source from, right? The people who make adjustments to their daily routine and their systems to make sure that they don't default into bad habits are the ones that will ultimately succeed, right? And so for the people who want to become better versions of themselves, just start today, right? Just start making those adjustments today, because when you chip away enough at, a rock after enough time, right, eventually you're going to shape it into something beautiful.
So that excellent example on how we can step into the new version of us. Let me ask you this, and I'm probably going to put you on the spot here a little bit.
Of course, that's what I'm here for.
Dig deep into the conflict resolution world.
Yeah.
So we all have subpersonalities that we've developed to protect ourselves. There's a lot of conflict in us moving forward, and that subpersonality wanting us to not move forward because it might not be safe. How do we deal with that conflict inside of ourselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. Identity can be a huge two-edged sword in this case, right? What I've noticed in my own path was that the identity bestowed upon me by my parents, that was one that I just kind of inherited, right? And then for a long time, early on in my life, right, I let the opinions of others dictate who I was, right? If people said, oh yeah, he's outgoing and funny, well, I guess I am pretty outgoing and funny, and then all of a sudden I'm an extrovert just because people expected that of me, and I just kind of filled that glove. I filled that space. Other times, maybe my energy is down, and people say, "Oh, wow, Jerry's really reserved. He's really, disengaging, or he's just really aloof." And I said, "Well, you know what? I guess I was just too readily willing to agree with other people, right, when it comes to this." And part of this, if people want a turning point when it comes to realizing that, hey, ultimately, the most important opinion you have of yourself, it comes from you, right? The first step is to, again, generate awareness, right? Write down, everything in a notebook. Hey, who am I? Right? If I had to describe myself, what would I want to describe myself as? Right? And this isn't just about vocation or profession. What kind of personality do you think is true to you? Right? Is this in line with who you want to be? I'll give an example. So one of my technicians is notoriously late. And, I would call her on it. She goes, no, this is just who I am. Like, I'll be late to my own funeral. And I had to ask her, right? Why are you telling yourself this? Who told you this? Why are you, did you have to agree with them? Right? And, it took her a while to realize, but ultimately, thankfully, she embraced the idea that, hey, you know what? This identity is not permanent. I believe this world is temporary, and even the best things that this world has to offer are still temporary. And that is true for our identities, right? You don't have to embrace the identity your parents gave you. You could become someone completely different. In fact, one of my coaching cohorts, there is this woman, she's half Mexican, half American, but in her teens, she decided to embrace French culture. And so she's fluent in French. In fact, if it weren't for the fact that she mentioned that she comes from a Hispanic family, I would have guessed that she was French, right? And so it's amazing what people will become when they put their minds to it.
It is. I want to ask you, do you feel that conflict is necessary in our lives?
Oh, great question. 10 years ago, I would have said, no, I don't need it. I don't want it. I just want a comfortable, predictable, easy life. And now it's not fun. I'm not going to deny it. It's not pleasant, but it is very necessary, because it's not the healthiest organizations aren't absent of conflict. In fact, they have it, and it's more about their response to it than it is anything else that really sets them apart. Because if people embrace conflict and they realize, hey, you know what? We don't have to agree on everything. We just have to agree on the most essential things, right? When one distinguishing question we like to ask in coaching is this a preference or is this a principle, right? Oh, well, I like the temperature at like 70 degrees. Okay, is that a preference? It probably is a preference. Well, my techs like it colder. Oh, well, shucks, you're gonna have to compromise, right? And I very rarely do I hear about relationships that survive if people are not willing to compromise. But that's what conflict teaches you, right? You realize, hey, you know what? Let me pick my spots and make sure that if this person is truly important to me, that I'm not going to split hairs over things that I would prefer, but ultimately are not going to affect our relationship. So, yeah.
So you shared with us so many great examples of conflict and ways to work with conflict. What would be the parting guidance that you'd like to share with the imagination that they would take away from this conversation to truly change their life when it comes to conflict resolution?
Yeah, I'll be happy to share some of the steps that, some of my own personal playbook best practices. The first is to believe that you can have a successful resolution. The first is to believe, hey, success might not look like what you want it to, right? Success, we want to believe that somehow we can restore every relationship to 100%. And that realistically won't happen. Like, it's okay. If it happens, great, celebrate that. But if not, hey, know when to let go, right? Success might be, hey, I finally wrote up my employee that had not been up to par. Other times, hey, success might be, nope, I have to terminate this person and we're going to have to part ways, right? But to believe that this is possible, right? That was the reason why I became a more effective leader. I didn't become one until I believed I could become one. So same thing with conflict. Hey, until you believe you can be successful at it and allow for that possibility, you might get better at it, but realistically, it'll take probably a lot longer. The second is to recognize the cost of not engaging and to say, hey, what is my hesitation costing me? How much longer can I afford to compensate for technicians not pulling their weight? And now I'm doing 2 jobs for the price of 1, right? That was a big thing for me. The third is a tip I got from another pharmacist friend, where you learn to drum up 10 seconds of courage. Too often I would think, oh, I have to be brave enough. I have to have everything right before I finally engage this person. and then 6 months go by, or some ridiculous amount of time that, doesn't work. Right. And so you realize I don't need to be Superman or Wonder Woman. I just need 10 seconds of courage to get the ball rolling so I can pick up the phone or send that email or send that text and say, hey, I need your help with something. Can you please call me, or can you tell me a good time where we can talk? So those are 3 things from my playbook where I've personally been able to engage better and not default into bad habits of avoidance. And don't get me wrong, guys, if there are days where I'm just tired and we're busy and I just say, you know what, if it's just easier for me to fix this right now, I will. But that has to be the exception and not the rule, if you're going to expect to be good at this long term.
And we all have conflict in our lives. And as Jerry shared with us, it really is necessary to help us move forward and to experience ourselves or our business in a new way. So it's learning to work with conflict, to work with others in resolving the conflict that is going to empower us to live our lives in a stronger way, in a more supportive way for ourselves, in a more supportive way for others. And I know there's lots of people that want to learn about conflict resolution. Jerry, how can they get in touch with you? How can they learn more about you?
Yeah, sure. You can find me on LinkedIn. That's the one social media handle that I have. Otherwise, if you want a little more substance, by all means, go to my website, www.adaptingleaders.com. From there, you can schedule a complimentary 30-minute consult. I have a free PDF download on a framework to handle hard conversations. And you can also check out my blog where I summarize and give takeaways from useful and interesting leadership books, along with some life hacks for common challenges.
Well, so many gifts. Thank you so much for providing that to the imagination, as well as providing that to others. It's so important for us to resolve that conflict inside of ourselves and the conflict that we have with others, so we can free ourselves to open up to so much more. And I'll make all that information that Jerry just shared with us available on his show page. Just go to themiracleu.com, look for Jerry Fu's show page. That information will be available. Jerry, thank you so much for joining me today, taking time out of your busy day to share with us the importance of understanding conflict in our lives, the importance of understanding the resolution of that conflict and how important it is to us.
Thanks, Vince. Have a great day, everybody.
Yes, thank you so much. On behalf of Mary, my wife and business partner, the entire team here at Imagine Miracles, we want to wish each and every one of you a miracle day.
You've completed this episode of The Miracle You, but we have plenty more to help you discover your own personal passion and purpose. Head over to themiracleu.com for free resources to assist you on your journey, as well as register for our free webinar, Discover Your Miracle Life, 3 mind awakening steps toward your unique purpose, or apply for a one-on-one Your Life, Your Way breakthrough session and discover your next best step on your journey. All available exclusively on our website. That's themiracleu.com. We look forward to sharing more experiences of passion, purpose, and life by design next time, right here on The Miracle You.